Welcome to the Restricted Handling Podcast. This is what's been going on in China in the past 24 hours. China closed out the year by running one of its most aggressive military exercises around Taiwan to date. Over December 29th and 30th, the People's Liberation Army executed what it calls Justice Mission 2025, a large-scale snap drill that simulated a full-spectrum blockade of the island. This wasn't just jets buzzing the median line or ships hanging out at a distance. This was about showing proximity, control, and pressure, up close and personal. The PLA carved up the waters and airspace around Taiwan into multiple operational zones, essentially wrapping the island in restricted areas north, south, east, and west. These zones overlapped major ports, commercial flight paths, and shipping lanes. Keelung in the north, Kaohsiung in the south, and Hualien on the east coast were all clearly in focus. The message wasn't subtle. China wanted to show it can squeeze Taiwan economically, militarily, and psychologically, all at once. On the hardware side, the numbers were significant. At least 18 PLA Navy surface vessels were involved, spread across the island's approaches. More than 200 aircraft sorties were flown in just 2 days, with well over half crossing the Taiwan Strait median line. Rockets were fired into waters north and south of Taiwan, and this time some of them landed inside Taiwan's 24 nautical mile contiguous zone. That's closer than we've seen before, and Taiwan's defense officials called it out as such. What really stood out, though, was how central the China Coast Guard was to the operation. 14 Coast Guard ships on day 1, 15 on day 2, operating alongside PLA Navy warships. These weren't just symbolic patrols. Coast Guard vessels moved inside Taiwan's contiguous zone and came within a couple nautical miles of outlying islands like Matsu and Wuchu. For the first time during a blockade-style exercise, Chinese Coast Guard ships also operated around Pratas Island in the South China Sea. This is the same playbook China has used for years in the South China Sea. Let the Coast Guard take the lead, frame everything as law enforcement, and keep the Navy just behind them as the muscle. Boarding drills, interception drills, expulsion drills, the kind of things that don't look like war on paper, but absolutely function like one at sea. Taiwan's defense ministry said Coast Guard units had been practicing vessel boarding and seizure in shipping lanes even before the exercise officially began. At the same time, the PLA wasn't pretending this was only about a quarantine. Amphibious and air assault capabilities were front and center. The Type 075 landing helicopter dock Hainan showed up in a Taiwan encirclement drill for the first time, transiting through the Bashi Channel with escorts and coordinating with bomber formations. A Type 071 landing platform dock was also operating east of Taiwan. Helicopter assault drills were filmed and released, clearly aimed at reinforcing the idea that a blockade could pivot fast into something much uglier. Bomber forces were active as well. H-6 aircraft, capable of carrying long-range anti-ship cruise missiles, were used to simulate strikes east of the first island chain. Anti-submarine warfare assets were deployed too, including frigates with upgraded sonar and helicopters hunting below the surface. The implication was obvious. China isn't just thinking about Taiwan's defenses, it's thinking about how to keep U.S. and allied forces out if things escalate. Interestingly, China did not deploy aircraft carriers or its most advanced Type Phi-5 destroyers during this exercise. That looks less like restraint and more like modular planning. Beijing has already practiced carrier operations further out in the Pacific earlier this year, including near sea lines of communication between Japan, Taiwan, and Guam. This drill appeared designed to rehearse the inner layer of a blockade, not the whole stack at once. Taiwan responded quickly. President Lai Ching-te went on air and made it clear that Taiwan intends to defend its sovereignty. He pushed again for a major increase in defense spending, around $40 billion, which is currently tied up in Taiwan's opposition-controlled parliament. The military activated emergency readiness drills across the island, including river defense exercises near the mouth of the Tamsui River, long viewed as a potential vulnerability for amphibious forces trying to get close to Taipei. The drills disrupted civilian life as well. Dozens of domestic flights were canceled, and commercial shipping had to reroute around the restricted zones. That's part of the pressure campaign, too. Even without firing a shot at Taiwan itself, China demonstrated how quickly it can complicate air traffic, maritime trade, and daily life. International reactions followed fast. Washington issued a warning urging Beijing to halt military pressure and avoid destabilizing actions. That came just days after the U.S. approved an $11 billion arms package for Taiwan, one of the largest in recent years. European governments, Japan, South Korea, the UK, and the Philippines all released statements calling for restraint and dialogue. The Philippines had a front row seat to the spillover. During the Taiwan drills, a Chinese research vessel was spotted operating near Cagayan province, inside the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. Manila scrambled an aircraft to challenge the ship, citing possible unauthorized marine research. China brushed it off as routine operations, but the timing was hard to miss. Cagayan also happens to host sites accessible to U.S. forces under defense agreements, which adds another layer of sensitivity. While the military pressure was unfolding, China was reinforcing its leverage in other domains. Rare earths remain a big one. Beijing continues to restrict exports of critical rare earth elements and magnets, materials that underpin everything from electric vehicles to advanced weapon systems. China controls the vast majority of global rare earth production and processing, and these restrictions have already hit U.S. allies hard. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent recently described China's actions as pointing a bazooka at global supply chains, which is a pretty vivid way of putting it. At the same time, the U.S. quietly renewed annual export licenses for major semiconductor firms operating in China, including TSMC, Samsung, and SK Hynix. These licenses allow continued imports of U.S.-controlled chip-making equipment into China-based fabs that produce mature node chips. It's a reminder that even as tensions spike, economic entanglement hasn't gone away, and decoupling is still selective, not absolute. Diplomatically, Beijing is also staying active. President Xi is set to host South Korean President Lee Jae-myung for a state visit, the second meeting between them in just a couple of months. The timing matters. China's relations with Japan are tense over Taiwan, and South Korea is trying to balance its U.S. alliance with its deep economic ties to China. Rare earth supply chains, semiconductors, and advanced technology cooperation are all expected to be on the table. Then there's the cyber and intelligence side of the picture. A major data breach involving a Chinese cybersecurity firm exposed internal documents showing offensive cyber tools, global targeting lists, and coordination with Chinese military and public security organs. The leaked material pointed to surveillance of Taiwan's critical infrastructure and large-scale data collection from telecom networks and government systems across multiple countries. It's the digital version of the same pressure campaign playing out at sea, mapping, monitoring, and preparing options. China also kicked off the new year by implementing a slate of new domestic laws, tightening control over public security, data, and artificial intelligence governance. Administrative detention authorities were expanded, cybersecurity oversight strengthened, and state control over online content reinforced. Internally and externally, the direction is the same: more control, less ambiguity, and a higher tolerance for friction. Thanks for being a part of the RH community. Subscribe, leave a positive comment or 5-star review, and most importantly, help build our network by sharing this.